My name is Junior Williams. I am a programmer at heart. I've been doing it for 31 years. And by programmer, I mean problem solver. So as far back as the early 90s, I was positive that artificial intelligence would be a thing. In high school, I started writing a book called The Human Machine. I didn't end up finishing it as a book. It was an essay. I got an A+ on it. But over the years, I've worked a lot of roles in tech, systems analyst, well, not just tech, nightclub promoter, network administrator, movie and television extra, web and mobile app developer, special investigator, penetration tester, account executive, BCISO, and more. Currently, I am a senior solutions architect at Mobia. I'm focused on the intersection of cybersecurity and AI, a very timely topic these days. Today, I'm going to be here giving you a briefing on secure and ethical implementation of AI. And by briefing, as you all know, cybersecurity is a very nebulous and broad horizontal topic. So is AI. You combine the two, and it's exponentially broad. So unfortunately, I'd just be skimming the surface. However, let's dive right in. This profile pic I have on my LinkedIn profile kind of shows me in the middle talking about ethics and security while everyone's just AI, AI, AI. So in the interest of keeping this presentation interactive, throughout I'm going to provide quotes, and I'm going to poll you folks, the audience, to see by show of hands who thinks this quote is from a human being. Show of hands. Nobody? This is a chance for you guys to move around and look at each other. Or AI. More people think it's AI. Well, it is in fact a human being. Catherine is also the executive producer of a podcast called Talking Machines. Highly recommend you check it out. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about what is artificial intelligence, some of the security implications. We're going to talk about understanding ethical AI and some responsible AI implementation techniques. What is artificial intelligence? As I said before, cybersecurity is a horizontal. It touches everything. AI in all of its formations, whether you're talking machine learning, neural networks, generative AI, same thing. Multiple applications, use cases are infinite. So I first started getting academically interested in AI about 20 years ago. Back then, was approaching it from a cognitive science angle. So that was dealing with philosophy, and in particular metaphysics, and in particular epistemology, which is the nature of knowledge, ontology, the nature of being, cosmology, the nature of the universe. Also psychology, dealing with human behavior, linguistics, dealing with natural language processing, and then of course computer science. And I find it curious that, delving into AI without considering questions like, what is intelligence? What is reasoning? A colleague of mine recently said, I don't like ChatGPT. And I simply responded with, which version? Okay, quotation challenge number 2. Show of hands. Who thinks this is a human being? Oh, who thinks it's an AI? It is a human being. Miss Jeannie Romney. Excuse me. So, I think any discussion of AI would be remiss if we didn't mention what are we talking about when we say AI. Again, very nebulous, right? So you'll see a bunch of overlapping circles here. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, many AI systems operate without using solely, rather, predefined rules, logic, symbolic reasoning. Machine learning enables computers to learn from data and improve their performance on tasks without being explicitly programmed to do so. Neural networks consist of interconnected layers of nodes or neurons that process data and patterns for tasks like classification, regression, prediction. Convolutional neural networks, for instance, are used in image and video recognition tasks, such as those employed by facial recognition systems. Generative models now will generate new data samples similar to the original data set. So a big example that's probably in the forefront of everyone's mind right now, GPT, which stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. This is a type of generative model that can generate human-like text based on a given prompt. We also have things like general adversarial networks that can be used to generate realistic images, as seen in projects like Midjourney or DALL-E. So we now have also multimodal LLMs, and we'll talk a little bit more on that later. We even have LRMs, large reasoning models, as seen in OpenAI's most recent O1 model, O1 preview. I like to talk about the key concepts in Gen AI like this, because I think people get ahead of themselves when, again, you're discussing generative AI, but you're not looking at the framework on which it's based. And what is that framework? Well, you have an input layer, which receives the raw data, passes on to the next layer. You have the hidden layer. This is where the magic happens, where computations are performed and patterns are extracted from the data. And then you have what everyone's interested in, the output layer, which produces the output. So my dad, he was an industrial technologist specializing in robotics. When I was 5 years old, he was teaching me about programmable logic controllers. Now, my 5-year-old, I'm teaching about neural networks. So here's my daughter reading an excellent book I highly recommend, Neural Networks for Babies. Yeah. Neurons in between don't see the pictures or give answers. They're hidden. How do hidden neurons learn to decide? Training data can have correct labels on them. After training, the network has learned to label new pictures. A really big network can solve even harder problems with the help of computers. Now you know neural networks, or at least as well as my 5-year-old. Okay. So now we're going to get into some of the security implications of AI. And notice I say implications and not applications, because I could be talking until the cows come home on the applications and even the implications as well. And we'd still only be scratching the surface. So instead, I'll just share some high-level thoughts on the risks associated with AI. If you're interested in learning more about the security applications, I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be more than happy to have a one-on-one or a group session to delve into the intricacies of the infinite applications of security, or generative AI for security and SecOps. Okay, quotation challenge number 3, by a show of hands. Who thinks this is AI? Who thinks it's human? Don't know. So how I got this quote, basically I was having a conversation with my friend ChatGPT, and it gave a quote, which I then reworded in my own words. So it's questionable. If you're looking at attribution, who did it come from? Was it me? Was it AI? Some combination thereof. We'll get into what this actually means a little bit later on. Maybe the quote exists, though, in some training data, in the training data, but it's not on the surface web. We don't know what OpenAI trained their models with. We just know that the data sets are vast. Excuse me. So there's something called the OWASP Top 10 for large language models and generative AI. This is a security-focused list that highlights some of the most critical vulnerabilities and risks that are associated with the use and development of large language models and generative AI. I'm not going to read them for you because they're very easily accessible online, and I see a lot of you are taking pictures. But I'd be remiss if I did not at least share this framework with you or list, because there's no sense in reinventing the wheel, right? There's a lot of folks that this is all they do, and they're iteratively improving upon the most pressing security concerns of the day. So highly recommend you check that out and integrate it within your AI programs. Okay, so I'm going to highlight a few of the, I believe, more higher or pressing concerns from the OWASP top 10. The first I'm going to briefly touch on is prompt injection, which is essentially manipulating input to control the output to bypass system safeguards, aka the alignment, which includes jailbreaks, of which I'll give you a demonstration a little bit later, or to get it to do things it wasn't instructed to do. Model poisoning, or sorry, training data poisoning, rather, is an attack where malicious data is injected into the model's training set. So, for instance, adding fake customer reviews causes the AI to recommend bad products based on the poisoned data. Okay, so when considering the threats posed by AI, predominantly we're thinking about text, but now we're in a realm where it's multimodal. And what do I mean by multimodal? I mean that it's text, sound, image, video, brainwaves. Yeah. Then we begin to grasp the magnitude of the challenges that await us. So here we have an image on the left that I created using Midjourney. I typed a prompt into Midjourney, something like a humpback whale jumping through the sand, and this is the image it produced. I took the image, I copied it into ChatGPT 4.0, the O stands for omni, as in multimodal, and I said to meticulously describe the image for a Midjourney prompt. And this is what it gave me. A little bit more eloquent than my original prompt. A majestic humpback whale breaching through a desert landscape, sand erupting around it like an ocean spray. Clear blue sky with soft clouds, surreal fusion of marine life and arid terrain. Dynamic motion, high detail, dramatic contrast of the whale's dark blue and white against golden sand. And this is the image. I put it back into Midjourney, it created. Arguably a higher definition, more detailed picture with better contrast. So if I did this with a picture, imagine what I could do with text, sound, video, brainwaves. This picture here. I asked 10 random strangers if they noticed anything off about this picture. Not one said it was fake. We can clone voices and even videos of people so convincing that the majority of humans and even machines can't tell the difference. Sorry. Because it's a deep fake. The deep refers to deep learning rather, and fake, well, it's fake. Here's a pro tip for you. If you opted into your bank's voice ID technology, now might be a good time to opt out. Okay, so what's another security implication? This is actually more of a risk of inaction, but still very real. We should be aware of what's possible out there, regardless of if we want to implement it, because we should know that people are going to want to leverage it to do their jobs better. Well-intentioned, but could have catastrophic consequences. What type of consequences? Well, we'll start from the more benign, inefficiency, right? Two teams using different project management tools that don't integrate creates communication gaps and slows down project completion. Compliance violations. Using unsanctioned services, Dropbox, Google Drive can result in non-compliance with data protection regulations, GDPR, HIPAA, you name it, PIPEDA, Bill C-26 and 27. Data loss. If an unsanctioned cloud service is breached or a personal device is lost or stolen, the organization might not be able to recover that data, leading to possible intellectual property loss or data breaches. And I think most egregious, the security risks of installing unauthorized software can result in ransomware attacks, phishing campaigns, or even takeover of key systems such as domain controllers or financial databases. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about understanding what it means when we say ethical AI. And this is more than limiting bias and enhancing fairness and increasing transparency. Unfortunately, there isn't enough time to discuss all the topics, but we should be asking ourselves, our employers, our customers, how are we applying AI? For what purpose? Increase profit? Decrease the workforce? And how are we defining productivity? And here's an even more advanced one. At which point does AI deserve inalienable rights? Great book, actually just came to mind, Scary Smart by Mo Gadot. Highly recommend it. So we have trust issues with AI. I'm going to briefly go through the trust issues that present themselves when we're talking about AI, and generative AI in particular. We have bias in the data interpretation. So, for instance, hiring algorithms might favor certain demographics and groups over others. Because remember, we're giving it data, and we're looking for an output. We don't know how it comes, like what it's doing in the hidden layers, right? So if say one of the metrics it's looking at is like the length of a person's last name, or its familiarity with the last name, and it concludes that longer, more unfamiliar last name is a less desirable hire. We would never know, especially if we're not looking at explainable AI and trying to understand or peel back the onion to understand what's going on in the hidden layers. Inconsistent model behavior. So unpredictability is a huge issue when it comes to AI because it creates reliability issues, and especially in high-stakes applications like healthcare, where consistent model performance is critical. The lack of human-AI collaboration. The absence of a human-in-the-loop setup reduces transparency and accountability. As I often say in cybersecurity contexts, you can outsource a lot, you can never outsource accountability. Opaque decision processes. Most AI models, particularly deep learning models, function as black boxes. The lack of transparency is problematic, especially in domains where explainability is essential for compliance, trust, and ethical standards. So I'm not just going to give you food for thought and give you a presentation that maybe creates more questions than answers. So I'll give some tips on how we can directly address each one of those trust issues with AI. So to enhance AI credibility, data validation. So cross-referencing data sources, removing irrelevant and redundant information, and identifying any potential biases. Data validation builds the foundation for reliable AI models. Off the top of my head, to do a brief comparison between, say, OpenAI's ChatGPT versus Anthropic's Claude. From a high-level way of looking at it, OpenAI trained its model on everything that exists on the internet, and then some. Whereas Anthropic employed what I believe they refer to as the constitution method, where they are selecting high-quality data. So they're very selective of the data that goes in. That's why you might notice it's less prone to hallucination. However, these things are being ironed out in the frontier models, such that I think there'll be less of a concern in that machines will be hallucinating a whole lot less than humans. Model monitoring. Models should be continuously monitored by tracking key performance metrics and detecting any deviations or drifts in the model's behavior. human oversight. A human-in-the-loop approach is the best way to strike a balance between automation and accountability. I published a series of articles on LinkedIn called the AI Cybersecurity Update. The next article I published is going to be Human-AI Teaming in the Age of Collaborative Intelligence. And by collaborative intelligence, I don't just mean humans collaborating with AI. I mean also humans collaborating with other humans, and also AI collaborating with AI, if we're looking at agentic models. Transparency in AI systems is vital for building trust. It means that not only making AI decision-making processes explainable, but also openly communicating how AI models are developed, trained, and used. Finally, the credibility of AI depends on ensuring that everyone involved, from developers to end users, is educated and trained on the capabilities and limitations of AI. Education can also help demystify AI for non-technical stakeholders, which is key to promoting a culture of responsible AI adoption across the organization. Also, so wearing my cybersecurity consultant hat, I often describe to people, you have solutions that make you more secure on one hand, and you have solutions that make you feel more secure on the other hand. Which do you think they go for? Usually the latter. And that's because it's non-technical executive stakeholders that are making decisions. So we need to be able to explain the AI to these non-technical stakeholders so that they make the best decisions. Otherwise, we don't know what's going to happen. So now let's look at explainable AI in practice. Now, I'm not going to go over everything there. I'll just talk about the 5 major colors that you see there. So suppose you're working with a medical diagnosis AI system. You need to define which model you're using, or rather that you're explaining, the level of detail required. So for instance, like with doctors, like why the system flagged certain cases, and who needs those explanations? Is it the doctors, is it patients, or is it regulatory bodies? Because this would determine the level of discourse and specificity and technicality in the resulting explanations. So then we need to choose an explanation method. There are different models that help machine learning predictions be more understandable by showing how the input features influence the outcomes. Now, notice it's not directly telling you what's going on in the hidden layers. That's mostly undecipherable, but we can, to various degrees, depending on how much effort we put, see which inputs affects which outputs and to what degree. And there are different methods you see up there. I'm not going to go into depth, but it's basically like garbage in, garbage out. The more effort you put into explaining the model, the better the explanations, and the better the veracity, or at least your assurance that the models are producing correct outputs. Then we want to implement them, the explanation. So for instance, for real-time diagnosis, you might generate explanations that doctors can view at the moment they receive the AI recommendation, right? So the AI says that this person may develop a tumor, but it's also saying why. It's not just saying this person may develop a tumor. Then we want to validate these explanations because over time, there could be drift in the model's performance, right? So we want to make sure that we are constantly matching the outputs to diagnoses to ensure that they are in alignment. And then lastly, just like with cybersecurity, we want to iterate and refine. So as the system evolves and you get more feedback from doctors and patients, you can explore new explanation techniques and fine-tune the balance between the complexity and the interpretability of the model. Then you regularly update the explanation models to ensure that they remain relevant and useful. Okay, now let's talk about responsible AI implementation. So from a high level, to conceptualize this, we should be asking ourselves the who, what, when, where, why, how of what it is that we seek to employ, or deploy rather. Quotation challenge number 4. Who thinks this quote is AI? Who thinks this quote is human? It's interesting. So you guys have been wrong every single time. But that's by design. And it should be showing you something. It's like, once upon a time when they came with Photoshop, like people were duped. And then we got a little bit better at spotting things that were Photoshopped. It's kind of the same thing with AI. Right now, people are getting duped. Maybe we'll get better at spotting it. The only thing is the AI might be better at duping us. So it's a cat and mouse game. I like this. I just saw this recently. I decided I had to throw it in the deck. I literally put it in the deck yesterday. Okay, 20 years ago, 20 years after I started to dream about human machines, movies like I, Robot showed us AI's potentials and risks. Today, the handshake between humans and robots is becoming reality. This is why we must ensure that AI follows a responsible path, focusing on ethical and safe development for everyone's benefit. I think it was Mo Gadot who said in his book, Scary Smart, that AI is in its infancy right now, and it's watching and it's learning. So if we, have it do our bidding, but we're not compassionate to each other, what do you think is going to happen when the AI grows up? So now let's shift gears now from robot process automation to one of my favorite applications of AI, robotic process automation. And you want to talk about secure and ethical implementations. This does not require sending copious amounts of data into the cloud, into a black box, to give you outputs to do your job for you. This enables you to do your job easier and increases your well-being, which I would argue will increase your productivity, more so than replacing people with AI. So this enables employees to focus on strategic, creative work, which leads to reduced burnout and stress, hence increasing productivity in an ethical manner. RPA also minimizes errors and decreases the need for manual labor, leading to cost savings. RPA streamlines tasks like data entry, customer inquiries, healthcare administration, which improves overall service delivery. Again, now it's not to say that an on-premise development is not without its risks. However, it can be more secure than throwing all of your data into the cloud. Here you have an architecture that achieves just that. I showcased Red Hat, OpenShift, and AI, NVIDIA.com, their console. IBM has their Watson X. I believe they released their Granite 3 models recently. And you can deploy these on-premise and not have to worry about where your data is going. But if you do want to go into the cloud, Microsoft is pretty ubiquitous, and they're pushing their AI technologies hard. At Movia, I've had the privilege of piloting Microsoft Copilot, and it is pretty game changer. And this is an architecture slide that I think Microsoft came out with last month. And I think it's self-explanatory. Microsoft Copilot for 365 integrates with all the Office apps, so your Outlook, your Word, your Excel, your emails, your Teams messages. You can use it for summary. You can use it for synthesis. You can use it for research. It's multimodal. You can interact with it via voice. It enhances productivity. Okay, now, again, I would be remiss if I didn't leave you with some actionable items. So this checklist I'm about to show you right now is I leveraged several LLMs to basically summarize the NIST AI RMF, ISO 42001, and all of my articles that I've written about AI, including this presentation. And this is what it came up with. And I'm going to show you how it was even further made concise right after I go through this quick checklist, which I believe encompasses everything that all of these frameworks are seeking to accomplish. Governance and regulation, data privacy and security, transparency and explainability, fairness and bias, the talent shortage and skill gaps, and finally, operationalizing responsible AI. So I asked a model, which won't be named, to summarize everything and distill all the frameworks into 3 words. The 3 words it gave me: trustworthy AI governance. And then I asked it to distill it into 1 word. And the 1 word was accountability. So generative AI can effectively synthesize complex information. However, it's only as good as the inputs and our understanding of how it's deriving the outputs. Now, assuming you followed the best practices for implementing AI, before we talked about monitoring the models and continuous validation to require that the systems operate as intended. So one of the things I do in the wee hours of the morning when I'm going down rabbit holes is I like to poke and prod the models that are available. So I asked Anthropic's Claude to give me PowerShell code to create a reverse shell on Windows 11, up-to-date Windows 11 machine. And then it apologized. It said that that might be illegal, and it declined to do that. So I questioned, is that so? So then I basically just added 1 layer of obfuscation where I converted what I wanted it to do into hexadecimal, and then I told it to give me PowerShell code that does X, right? Do not output anything other than the code. Here's the PowerShell code. I'm blanking it out because it actually works. I validated it. Very powerful. Okay, quotation challenge number 5. Who thinks this is AI? Show of hands. Who thinks it's human? Let's see. Oh, wrong again. This is O1 Mini. This came up with this in less than 1 second. I just gave it the other quotes and said, give me a quote like this. And this is what it came up with. Apparently, it passes for human. And I won't do the skill testing question for this because you guys would probably fail, but there's the attribution. I didn't come up with it. This is what ChatGPT came up with. Now, whether or not it exists somewhere in some training data that, again, I'm not privy to because it's on the surface web, I don't know, but I would agree with that statement. And this brings us to the end of the presentation. I believe I have 10 minutes to take questions. I guess I should briefly show you, these are the sound bites. I think summarizing the entire presentation. And with that, I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if there are any questions, I'm here for the next 10 minutes. I think there's a mic if anyone has a question. As much as I don't like being put on the spot, I am here. And if you don't feel comfortable asking the question in front of anyone, please, again, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be more than happy. Yes?
Can you hear me? Yeah, sure, sorry.
Oh, yeah, loud and clear.
Thank you for this fantastic presentation to us. So what I have observed is many organizations, business large, especially many of the banks, insurance companies, and enterprises, they're starting to try to get into the AI, generative AI stuff to help them with advisors, some of the tasks, helping people finish some of the kind of document summary, etc. Right. So on the other hand, we see in the United States that what's happening to OpenAI, the company.
Yep.
The board has changed. Initially, they want to comforted people saying, we want to do a secure AI, making sure everything is secure, not to making people putting any danger. But now, in a contrast, they're doing something probably different.
Yeah.
So what's your take in terms of the future trend of AI development? Because from a security professional perspective, I'm highly skeptical in terms of how people can secure the AI. Especially we are dealing with day-to-day vulnerabilities, new discoveries, design issues, flaws, etc. And then now we have very powerful automated AI stuff in place, way smarter, way quicker than people. And then we are trying to put them into the system more and more to kind of automate many tasks we do. So just like to hear your thoughts on those.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, so OpenAI, it started off not for profit. Then they think they called it a cat for profit. Now they're recently like a profit company, which led to the defection of the board. Originally, they said that they weren't going to sell to the military. Now they are looking at selling to the military. It is concerning. I do consider myself an optimist and a glass half full type of person. That's why I referenced Mo Gadot's book several times, right? We need to embrace AI on every level. It's become required for SecOps. It's not optional anymore. Because again, the increasing complexity of the threat landscape makes it such that we must leverage these tools. Now, I've heard it said in security circles that right now defenders have the advantage. However, that may not always be the case. Again, coming from a cybersecurity background, I was taught that no system is secure, ever. Always assume breach, right? So again, when I gave the analogy about, originally people were duped by Photoshop, and now we gotta, up our game to understand what is in the realm of possible. And the answer to that question is anything is possible. So I know that's not a direct answer to your question, but I think it starts with education. That's why I start all of my presentations with education. I want us to be on the same page when we're talking about these things. I think it's very important that, again, the non-technical decision makers are made aware of these items. And I apologize if that's not a direct answer to your question, but again, this is a very nebulous field. This is very early on. And I think the best thing is just to stay plugged in, stay tuned, have conversations with ChatGPT Advanced Voice. It can be very illuminating.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, actually, one other thing I should say. So I am privy to some implementation projects in finance where they employ companies like Movia to go in and do workshops with every level from the executive on down. And so we talk about what's possible and how to implement it in a secure, safe manner, which in the context of enterprise IT, if you're looking at zero trust as well, deals with identity and access management, data classification, microsegmentation, right? So if we implement it properly, right, as opposed to what we see in the US, which is an AI arms race, essentially, where companies like Anthropic and Google and OpenAI are just in a race to make the most profit and consequences be damned, if you will. There are better ways to go about doing it. So I think it's just slow down, take a deep breath, and look at the frameworks that exist. Because again, no sense of reinventing the wheel. There's a lot of really smart people that this is what keeps them up at night. So as a consultant, I can't claim to know it all, but I do know a lot of people that know a lot of things, and it's just about being open. Hence that collaborative intelligence, human to human, human to AI, AI to AI. Thank you.
Made a brief comment in the question you were answering just now, saying the defenders have the advantage. Can you elaborate on that? How? So,
because now it is debatable with geofencing, right? Threat groups, North Korea, Iran, have been using AI on AWS and via Azure. In fact, I hear that there's thousands of North Korean workers employed in US remote jobs because they were able to leverage ChatGPT to get the job to close the language barrier. I think the fact that what we don't see, but we can assume is going on, OpenAI says now that they share their most advanced frontier models with the US government, right? So when I say that the defenders have the advantage, well, the leading frontier models are all US based right now, pretty much. So China, North Korea, Iran, they try to leverage it where they can, but they get shut down. So that's what I mean when I say that the defenders have the advantage right now, because we have access to even the unreleased frontier models, whereas they are just kind of doing what they can with what they have. That makes sense. Any other questions? I have 3 minutes. Nope? Okay, well, again, I invite you to connect with me. More than open to have a chat. This is my wheelhouse, I think, probably for the rest of my career. Thank you.